Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining in. Again, this week I have a great show planned for you. Later on, I have with me John Moses, who is the CEO of Youth Services Systems here in Wheeling, and we'll be talking all about what that organization does and also the Wheeling Sleep Out that's coming up. But first, some of our usual features. And I want to start off talking about the upcoming election. I've been talking a lot about that. Early voting is now underway, so that means the election is here, basically. I mean, a lot of people do early vote now. It's easy to do. As I talked about on last week's show, you just go down to the courthouse. There's really no lines hardly to speak of when you do that, and a piece of cake to do it. So if you can't get out on election day, go and early vote. But one of the things that's been interesting to me are the debates that have been held here in the first senatorial district race in West Virginia. A lot of times we see debates on TV with respect to presidential elections and some other high-profile national elections, but I thought it was great to get these debates here in the first senatorial district. There was one on TV, the newspaper hosted another, and I thought it was, first of all, I thought very well done by those that put it on, but more importantly, it gave you a real opportunity to see what the candidates had to say about the issues, what they believe in, their demeanor, and so I really enjoyed that. And as I've said before, I think Bill Ehlenfeld would be a great senator from our district, but I thought that he came across in that debate as very prepared, very polished, and very professional. And that's something that you want to see from your leaders. So many times these days we don't see that from leaders, and I was glad to see that because it was really his first opportunity to get out there in the political realm. He's not, he's his first time really in politics, to get out there and see what he was going to be like in that type of role. And I was very impressed with what I saw. Again, still shaping up to be a very interesting race. A lot of the teachers, school service personnel, union workers are behind Bill Ehlenfeld. And as was discussed during the debate, the incumbent Ryan Fern's being supported by a lot of big corporations, healthcare professionals, et cetera. So that's a race that I'm really keeping an eye on, and it'll be interesting to see how that comes down on election day. But I really believe that Bill Ehlenfeld will be a great senator here for our district. I want to talk about the Supreme Court as well. I've been talking about that now for really a couple of months. And of course, there are 2 seats open on the Supreme Court, as I've mentioned, and the Division I seat, Division II seat. And Division II is something I particularly have my eye on. In that race, Jeff Kessler is one of the candidates. And I think that's significant because he is someone that is a very viable candidate from right here in the Northern Panhandle. And the reason that's important is that we do not have any representation on our Supreme Court from the Northern Panhandle. There are 5 justices on the Supreme Court. It's been quite some time since we've had any representation from the Northern Panhandle on the Supreme Court, probably going back to Justice Tom Miller, who's now passed away. But it's been decades since he was on the court. And I think we need to have representation here from the Northern Panhandle. Our part of the state is in many ways different than other parts of the state, and we need to make sure that our interests are represented there on the court. Jeff Kessler is someone who has statewide name recognition, having served as lieutenant governor of the state, president of the Senate, having run a campaign for governor. But more importantly, the reason I'm supporting him for this seat is because he understands and knows the law. He's worked in the law for a number of years. He's had a law practice, been the head of a law firm. He's represented people both in civil law and criminal law. He's been a prosecutor. He was a prosecutor for 15 years in Marshall County, served as special prosecutor in Ohio County and Wetzel County. He's done things such as adoptions. He's done things like wills. He's also litigated in the courtroom where you've gone in and had to present your case. So he understands really the whole realm of law, and there are so many things that come before the Supreme Court. Sometimes we think, well, just lawsuits or whatever. No, there are criminal cases that come before them. There are abuse and neglect things. There are property matters. There's just so many different things, things regarding wills and estates and how to interpret those things. So Jeff Kessler would be an excellent Supreme Court justice. He's fair. He's a West Virginian. He's lived here his entire life, born here, raised here, went to schools here, attended West Liberty here locally, then WVU for his law degree, and I know he would be a great Supreme Court justice. So I hope that the whole entire Northern Panhandle gets out and supports him so that we can have representation from this area on our court. I think that's very critical, so we don't see all those justices coming from Charleston and Huntington and basically the southern part of the state. So get out and vote for those. And we have some great candidates, I think, on the ballot up and down the Panhandle. I look at people that are running some that haven't been in for a while, like Randy Swartzmiller up in Hancock County. He's been out of office for a few years now. He's thrown his hat back in the ring, and it'd be great to see Randy back in our legislature. Sean Fluharty in Ohio County. If you want to talk about a fighter, Sean Fluharty is a fighter. He is not afraid to speak his mind. He ruffles some feathers down there in the legislature because of it, but he believes in fighting for the Northern Panhandle. He believes in fighting for his district. He believes in fighting for West Virginians, and he's not beholden to special interests, out-of-state corporations that dump money into our state because they want to see large corporations get by and over on things with the taxpayers' back. So Sean is a fighter, and I hope we can have his fighting voice continue to be in our legislature. And then you look down in Marshall County, and Lisa Zukoff, who ran for Senate 2 years ago, first time running for office, but got a lot of name recognition, and importantly, she won Marshall County. It was a 9-county district that she was running for Senate in. She won Marshall County, but had a tough time in some of those other districts. But I think this time, it's just Marshall County for the most part for her. And I think that she'll run very well there in Marshall County. But glad to see that Lisa didn't get discouraged by not winning that Senate race and saying, you know what, I'm going to do this again this time. I'm going to run for the House and try to go down there and be a voice for the people here in this area. So I think another great candidate. So it's a really exciting time, I think, this election season. And it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens with some of these races. Move on to a quote this week. And this one actually comes from my dad. It's not his original quote, but he said it to me this week. And I thought I would pass it along because I thought it was a great quote. It's, champions never get offended. Pretty simple, short statement. Champions never get offended, but there's a lot of truth to that. People that are successful, people that are winners, they don't focus on what people are saying about them, what they're doing, or maybe how they've done them wrong in some way. What they do is forgive, they forget, and they move on. They say, what am I going to do now? And so I thought that particular quote about not getting wrapped up in negativity and the little things that people may be saying or doing to you, and just doing what you need to do, doing positive things, is really summed up by that quote. So champions never get offended. Great quote. Thanks to my dad for passing that along to me. We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll have John Moses with me. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
Looks like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me. This week's no different. I have with me John Moses, who's the CEO of YSS, Youth Services System, and a lot of people just usually refer to it as YSS because it's a mouthful, but thanks for being here on the show. I really appreciate it, Mr. Moses.
Appreciate it.
You've been there a long time now. I think since I was a kid, if I'm
39 years.
Yeah, well, that would be. I'm 43, so I was, I guess, 4 when you started there, and so quite a long time you've been there now.
Well, it's, I always tell people I feel it's been a privilege for me to be in the lives of so many kids and now adults for all of these years. I'm especially proud of the fact that I was very good friends with our founder. That would have been Brother Ron Mulholland. And I think the important story about YSS is its growth has been directly related to what needs there were for kids and families in our communities. Realized we were the first group emergency shelter in the state of West Virginia. Before that, none of that existed. So at this time, we have a number of programs. We still have Samaritan House emergency room for boys. Helsinki Shelter located on Wheeling Island for girls. We have what's called a residential treatment program for kids with some intellectual delays. It's called the Youth Achievement Center. For probably 30-odd years, we've run the Juvenile Detention Center. And I think Ron would have enjoyed this, we happily renamed it the Ronald C. Mulholland Juvenile Center. If you knew his mother, you would have learned that he was much the delinquent when he was a kid himself. I'm also proud to say that we were one of the first in the state of West Virginia to provide transitional living services for youth anywhere from 17 to 20. Prior to that, if a kid was in care and they came on their 18th birthday, there was no support, no programming for them after that. And you and I both know, even though I'm a lot older than you, that even at 18, you need a lot of support, a lot of direction, even if you think you've figured it all out.
Oh, I think at 43, I still need a lot of support and direction. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Right. So we have a lot of community programs as well. We inherited the former Big Brothers Big Sisters program, so I'm proud to say that those matches stayed intact, and we are growing that program to hook up more kids with mentors in this community. More recently, we took over the operation of the Lazarus House and the Mary Martha House. These are recovery houses for adults who are in treatment or who have completed treatment but need a kind of fresh start, a place to stay where they can be supported until they get employment or further their education, and ultimately go out and live on their own. The Impact Coalition is one of the many prevention programs that we have had in the community. And we have a lot of grant programs. One that I'm particularly proud of, it's called the School-Based Mental Health Program. So we have staff people in elementary, middle schools, and high schools up and down the Northern Panhandle.
This is a ton of programs and facilities and things you're talking about. I mean, much even broader than I knew about or envisioned. And I mean, you got employees, you've got volunteers. I mean, how many people does it take with respect to all these things?
We have a little over 200 employees now, and we do have a lot of volunteer help. I forgot to mention, every winter, probably for the last 9 years, we have opened our administrative offices for the Wheeling. It's called the Winter Free Shelter. So we take in homeless every year that aren't able to be sheltered anywhere else.
One thing that people may not realize, the name YSS, Youth Services System, kind of suggests that it's all about youth, and a lot of it is about the youth, but a number of the things that you just identified have to do with adults as well.
Well, we've wanted, as I said earlier, we've wanted to be able to answer the need of the community. The reason that we extended ourselves, probably because I'm an old man, but part of the reason that we've extended ourselves is that I have met many kids, now adults, now with families, who have succeeded in their life. Some still have problems, some still have needs. So, we've grown kind of as a family without intending to. And I think that that's real important. We have done this Winter Free Shelter as a service to the community. We are very grateful for how the community has helped us over the years, and they have been very generous. So we wanted to demonstrate that we wanted to give to others as well. Now, interestingly, with that Winter Free Shelter, we have received a lot of young people, some 18, 19 years old. So that's an opportunity for us to invite them into our transitional living program if that's what their need is.
That's fantastic. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about all the things that YSS does and the upcoming Wheeling Sleep Out. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
You earned it. Let us help you save it. Belmont Savings Bank. Focused on your future.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists. Denoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with John Moses, the CEO of YSS Youth Services System here in Wheeling, and been talking about some of the services that the organization provides to both youth and adults. But there's a big event coming up also,
Right.
the Wheeling Sleep Out. And you were just telling me, I didn't realize how many years it's been going on now.
Yeah, 8 years now. November 2nd at the I-470 ball fields. It's probably one of the most unusual events if you've never been there. What occurs is a lot of teams are formed that build these structures that they actually sleep in. And I've just am absolutely amazed by some of the creativity with a lot of these teams. I'll give you an example. Jody Prather was, his employees were participants for many years from Gumby's. They made a bridge, it looked like the suspension bridge, that you could actually walk on. I imagine that 5 or 6 people could walk on it, but this thing was huge. And there's other very creative structures that are made year after year. My maintenance team always builds my box. Now they're working on a snow globe.
Okay.
Now I've got a clue. They said it's going to actually blow snow around, but I don't know how one sleeps in a snow globe. But so let me tell you why we do it. I had explained earlier that one of our programs is transitional living services. Over the years, we have been made aware of a lot of youth in our community who are homeless who have never been through the system. So the distinction is this: if a kid is in the DHHR's custody and comes to be 18, he or she can opt for our transitional living services. But we have had kids, or young people, I should say, referred to us by the Salvation Army who have never been in the system. You'd be surprised how many times over the years that I've heard kids, once they reach their 18th birthday, are told by their parent or parents, "We're done, you're on your own," and they don't have the resources or the direction to get started. So the funds that we raise from this sleep out are directed solely to those youth who have no other financial support, so we can put a roof over their head, have staff support them, make sure that they get employment or further their education, which actually is our preference, and get them a better start in life. Our goal this year is to raise $50,000 or more. We're getting very close to that goal. I'm told that we have at least 20 teams, 120 participants. Here's a good story. One of the first years, I met a little kid, I think he was 7 years old, by the name of Finn Loy from the New Martinsville, Payton City area. He had heard one of our staff give a presentation about this sleep out, and his mom, I think, was an elementary school teacher, so she got the whole class excited. And this kid, I think he shook down every merchant in Payton City for funds, but it drew so much attention he won first prize.
Oh, wow.
And he's been coming back year after year. So we do this because the outcomes for youth that don't get support are really terrible. 1 out of 5 kids who doesn't get support ends up being homeless. We kind of see it on the reverse side too, with that winter free shelter, that there's a number of people who have been on the streets for years and years, living in tents, but not getting ahead, not getting up. So it's very important for us that we reach out to that population and giving them the best start.
How can people still get involved, with this next week? I mean, can they participate? Can they donate? Where do they go to do that?
Well, if they Google Wheeling Sleep Out 2018, that'll draw you to our homepage where they can donate. They can still register as a participant and just come out to see the event. We'll have bands playing. We have games for kids. Charlie Schlegel from the Alpha is always out there cooking for everyone. And we have some support from other people in the community to make the whole event possible.
Great.
And if you're so daring to come out, I brought especially for you today the first ever YSS toboggan.
Wow, thank you very much. That's nice. It's got the logo and everything on there. Cool. Thank you very much for that. Well, I certainly will make sure that we make a contribution to that. We'll probably send a check rather than doing the online thing because it's a little easier from our business standpoint. But we'll get something out to you, and hopefully people will really come out and support it, and the many worthy causes that you all are trying to put forward there, and with all the other things that you do. So I really appreciate being on the show here to talk to our viewers about it. Thank you much.
Thank you. Okay.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking sports. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and let's start in Pittsburgh. What a great week to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. No game, yet end up in first place by the end of the weekend. All 3 teams in the AFC North that played lost. Browns, Bengals, Ravens all going down. So the Steelers find themselves going from really kind of the bottom of the division to the top. And now a game this weekend against the Cleveland Browns, a rematch of that Week 1 game that ended in a tie. And I don't think the Steelers will be surprised this time. They'll be ready. Of course, this time Baker Mayfield in the mix. Tyrod Taylor playing early in the year, and Baker Mayfield brings a whole different element to the game. But his first time at Heinz Field, I think it'll be tough for him. The Steelers, this time of year at home, always a tough place to play, always a tough team to beat. I think the Steelers win this one and win it big. The Steelers by double digits in this one to maintain control in the AFC North. Exciting times for the Steelers. Still have to work on that defense, and I think the defense will get after Baker Mayfield, get pressure this week, and that'll be a big key in the game. Let's set up your college football Saturday for you. First of all, at noon, number 2 ranked Clemson at Florida State on ABC right here on WTRF. And, Clemson coming off of the big win against NC State last week. Didn't surprise me. NC State hadn't really played anyone. But Clemson has that freshman quarterback playing, and I think this is going to be a different story this week. He has to go down into a hostile environment in Tallahassee, always a tough place to play. They'll get that tomahawk chop going with the crowd, and you're I mean, it's a different place to play down there in Tallahassee. It's a noon game, which doesn't make it quite as bad as it'd be if it was a night game, but I still think just too much for the freshman quarterback. The Seminoles have been kind of struggling, but they had a really impressive win last week against Wake Forest. Really, the game before that let Miami come all the way from 3 touchdowns down to come back and win, but really Florida State, performed well in the better part of that game. I like Florida State in the upset this week. Number 2 goes down for the second week in a row. I like Florida State in this one. Remember last week I predicted number 2 Ohio State to go down on this show. I said Purdue would upset them, and that's what happened. Ohio State couldn't run the football, and Purdue looked to be the better team all night long. Michigan now in the driver's seat in the Big Ten race, but they'll still have to play the Buckeyes later in the year. But I think number 2 goes down for the second week in a row, and Clemson gets upset. Then at 3:30, number 9 Florida versus number 7 Georgia on CBS right here on WTRF as well. A game known as the world's greatest cocktail party. College game day will be there for the first time in many years. It's going to be a little bit of a zoo down there. Georgia's had 2 weeks to get ready after that big loss against LSU. I don't think Florida can score enough points against this Georgia team. And, with that 2 weeks to prepare, I always like teams that have 2 weeks to get ready. I'll take Georgia to get back on track in this one and to beat Florida. Also at 3:30, number 18 Iowa at number 17 Penn State on ESPN. Penn State with 2 late losses now. They lost to Ohio State late in the game, lost to Michigan State late in the game. But I think Trace McSorley, the Penn State quarterback, makes enough big plays in this game at home in order to allow the Nittany Lions to win this one over the Hawkeyes. I'll take Penn State in this one. Then at 8 o'clock, number 3 ranked Notre Dame versus Navy in San Diego right here on WTRF on CBS. And Notre Dame coming off a bye week. Again, a team with 2 weeks to prepare, which I always like. It's a big advantage, especially getting ready for that Navy option attack. Navy gives Notre Dame problems some years because they run that option. They give a lot of people problems because you just don't see the option in college football a whole lot anymore. But with 2 weeks to prepare, I think Notre Dame will get the job done. And a lot of respect between these two institutions, Notre Dame and Navy, a long-standing rivalry that was kind of born out of the war years, and Navy doing some things to really help Notre Dame during the war years. But I think Notre Dame too much in this one, wins by at least 20 points. That'll lead us to the first college football playoff committee rankings next week. I think it's going to look like this. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Notre Dame, after the Clemson being upset this week. Number 3, LSU, and number 4, Michigan. And the interesting thing about that is that each of those 4 teams has played at least one of those other teams in the last 12 months. Alabama and LSU have played. Notre Dame has played LSU in the bowl game last year, has beaten Michigan in the home opener this year. So those teams have played each other. Alabama and LSU will play again next week. That's a game people are really looking forward to, with those teams having a couple weeks each to get ready for it. So big game coming up there. But first college football playoff rankings will be coming out next week. We'll be talking all about that on next week's show. That's all the time that we have this week. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you again next time on The Jamie Bordas Show.